Hello, my name is Haley Jackson, and I will be presenting on pages 101 through 130 of A Piece of the World. Um, me. Okay, so in specifics, today I'm going to be discussing Was It Love between Christina and Walton in A Piece of the World, and I'm going to be exploring the nature of love, devotion, and isolation in these pages. For a summary of what happened in these pages, Christina meets Walton, and Walton is an old friend of the Carl family who summers at the CV homestead and is introduced to Christina through Ramona. And Ramona is Christina's favorite of the Carl family. Christina is drawn to his attention and kindness, feeling seen for the first time in years. We can see this when he catches her, when she goes to fall, when they're walking, things like that. Their connection deepens, but Walton remains distant and never promises anything. Christina imagines a future with him, but he leaves to attend Harvard. His departure leaves her heartbroken and reinforces her lifelong sense of isolation. Love or loneliness. A quote that I chose for this page is, "It isn't inconceivable to imagine, is it, that this imperfect man could grow to love me?" That's on page 117. And for context, this is her discussing about how she has really grown to like him and how she's sort of realizing, like, look, there's something between the two of them. And by when she says imperfect man, she's referencing how she had just recently found out that when Walton was a child, he had scoliosis, and that impaired him greatly for the rest of his life. He told her this in confidence, and she says it makes her feel like he was telling her that to make her feel seen and understood. Christina's feelings for Walton grow out of loneliness rather than mutual love, however. Introduced through Ramona and the Carls, Walton's attention feels like an unexpected lifeline in Christina's isolated life. She mistakes attention for affection because she's rarely noticed or valued. The relationship raises the question, do they love each other or do they love the idea of each other? The power imbalance. Walton's life involves choices and movement. Christina's is restricted by duty and disability. When I say that, I am directly referencing when the two of them first met. They met because Ramona and Walton came up and wanted to take Christina away for the day, but Christina kept telling them, like, look, I can't go. I have stuff I need to do here. Granted, part of that was because she was being a little awkward, but mostly it's because it was true. She can't just get up and leave the farm. She has stuff she has to do, or she would have to face the consequences of not doing her job. Walton's free to come and go from the Carl's circle. She remains tied to the farm and her family. And another point on that would be how Walton doesn't even want to go to Harvard. He's doing it to please his father. And she is like this girl who doesn't even get to have the idea of leaving and going to these places. He is like, I get to go, but I really don't even want it. Like his snide remark about the suffragettes being treasonous despite their desire for equal rights highlights his limited perspective and reinforces the social constraints on Christina. This was especially interesting to me because this raised a lot of red flags for Walton because despite all of his other quotes on this good traits, this kind of showed how he was really deep down. Like, despite the fact that, yes, they do have things in common and he is nice to her, the fact that he thinks women just seeking equal rights is treasonous, and it seems to me like he thinks it's silly and ridiculous to think about, and it's a fad. Kind of shows, a lot about his personal character. This imbalance shows how freedom, social views, and gender play a role in shaping who gets to love and who gets left behind. More on suffragettes. In the early 1900s, women across the U.S. fought for the right to vote and for broader social equality. Suffragettes were often labeled radical or even treasonous for challenging traditional gender roles. Many men, like Walton, viewed the movement as disruptive to social order rather than a fight for justice. Christina's quiet endurance contrasts sharply with the suffragettes' public activism. Both reflect different forms of resistance. Walton's remark reveals his privilege and the limits of his empathy, highlighting the barriers women like Christina faced. And another thing about this that was quite interesting was that while Christina wasn't entirely aware of what a suffragette was, she wasn't against the idea. However, she did not really relay that information to Walton out of fear of him disagreeing or becoming part of that treasonous label, in his eyes at least. Devotion as self-destruction. The quote that I have here says, I'm a little hesitant to offer interpretation. What if he disagrees? And this quote is not in relation to what I just said, but it is on another point. The two of them were discussing an Emily Dickinson poem, and he tells her, I never understood the ending of it. Now, Christina, being a big Emily Dickinson fan, of course, had her own reading of it and had an understanding of the ending that she wanted to share with him. But she stopped and she considered, what if he doesn't like what I have to say? You know, I, I don't want to say it because what if he doesn't like it? Christina confuses devotion with love, giving everything of herself to others. Loving Walton becomes another act of service, emotional labor with no return. She filters herself to fit what she believes he will like most. Her loyalty is both her strength and her downfall. Klein shows that selfless love can become a form of confinement. Dependency and the idea of love. Over just one summer, Christina grows dependent on seeing Walton, clinging to the rare attention he gives her. His absence feels unbearable. She describes it as living in a jail cell, waiting for release. And you can find that on page 122. When his long-delayed letter finally comes, she's so overjoyed that she ignores how long it took, a sign of her emotional desperation. Now, on that point, I understand this was in, I believe, the 40s, so they didn't exactly have this thought, most likely, of what if he's not writing to me because he's cheating on me or doesn't love me, especially someone like Christina who doesn't have a lot of exposure to relationships like this. But as a reader, that's immediately what I was thinking. And I find it very interesting that he immediately, when he does write back, it's just right back in it. He is just all in on this lover boy sort of like sort of vibe that he puts out of, oh, I love you, my dearest, that sort of thing. Um, and I find it funny that it it kind of, so far at least, I don't know how the relationship is going to end. I don't know, but she calls his letters a portal into another life. And you can find this on page 124, revealing how she uses him to imagine escape and belonging. Now, on that point, when I say that, I am referencing how she goes in detail about how she wishes and sees herself in these letters, just going about her day-to-day life, living the life of a college kid, going to the library every day with her nose in a book because she loves it and wants to learn because that experience was robbed from her. And he gets to live it, regardless of the fact that he doesn't exactly want to be there. He's getting to live this life she couldn't even imagine living. Both Christina and Walton may be drawn less to each other than to what the other represents. Freedom for her, simplicity for him. Now, when I say simplicity, I am directly referencing the point where when Christina is telling her family about how, they're in love, um, and they're like, well, what makes you think he's gonna stay here and stay with you? And Christina says, he's become smitten with our way of life. I find it very interesting that she doesn't say he's become smitten with her. He's become smitten with their way of life. And to me, that means he likes having this simple life where it's the quote unquote farm life, and he doesn't have to go to school that he doesn't want to go to. He gets to stay there and have Christina sew and cook and clean, that sort of thing, is the way I read it at least. Their connection exposes how easily longing can be mistaken for love and how fantasy can become a form of survival. To conclude, Christina's relationship with Walton was real in feeling, but not in equality or fulfillment. It reflects on how isolation, gender roles, and social constraints shape what love can mean. For Christina, love is not partnership. It is the ache of being seen and understood, even briefly. Klein demonstrates that even unreturned or imagined love can leave a lasting mark on life. And these are my sources. Thank you.